Welcome to Beyond the Frontline podcast, where your host, U.S. Air Force veteran Donna Hoffmeyer, will help you transition from the front line to the home front. Listen every other Wednesday as we'll bring great conversations, resources, tips, and feel-good stories that will resonate and relate. Now, here's your host, Donna Hoffmeyer.
Hey everyone, it's Donna, and I want to talk about something that actually kind of caused me a lot of stress when I was in the military. So I got to tell the backstory so we can get into this, because what I promised on this is that this is not going to be used as Donna's personal therapy session. We're going to get into talking about the pattern recognition of this. So what we're talking about is toxic workplace environments. So the backstory of this is, in the short version, my last jobs in the military, I was in a very, very toxic environment. It was extremely stressful. I would question myself. Gaslighting was a daily event. Getting put on the spot, it was a daily event with me. I was berated in meetings. I had one boss tell me to shut the fuck up in the middle of a meeting. I had people undermine me, go behind my back, and cancel meetings that I had scheduled for something specific. And I'm going to caveat here, we were all senior ranking officers. So you would think it was something out of like a high school drama, but this was actually a military workplace. So having said that, so one day I'm doom scrolling through Instagram or something, and I see this lady just pop up and start talking about toxic workplace environments. So I reached out to Miss Chelsie Stinson and I said, hey, I saw you on Instagram and we got to talk. So I'm super excited that Chelsie was so willing to come on at pretty much a moment's notice. And Chelsie has a really interesting background. She's actually an occupational therapist by trade. And then she became a realtor when she wanted a little more flexibility in her life with family. But the commonality between those two doesn't sound like anything, but it's what she did. She dealt in leadership. She dealt in workplace environments and having to communicate up and down a chain. And she saw the challenges and the good, bad, and ugly. And she started to expound on that. And then she started to bring this forward onto social media. And I am telling you, hands down, you got to go find her. So having said that, we want to focus on pattern recognition, how to recognize this. And Chelsea's going to talk about what she's doing to make an impact to help you guys out. So Chelsea, welcome.
Hi, Donna. Thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
I am so excited. Like, seriously. I was very excited this morning. I was telling my husband.
Also, just so you know, you can find me as Chelsie Stinson. Also, Legacy Life with Chels is a lot of my social media accounts.
Perfect. We'll have that in the show notes. She'll have all those for us.
Perfect.
All right, where to start? You started as an occupational therapist, which I was funny when we talked. I was like, wait a minute, you're OT doing this until you explained it to me. So explain how this all works together.
Yeah, so I was an occupational therapist, but I was always in high-level management. I was a rehab director, operations roles, and then even as I left that after 12 years, I mean, I'm still a therapist, but moved out of that and moved more into the real estate focus. I also, again, went into an operations role. And what I was finding was it didn't matter. I was noticing patterns, and noticing the patterns helped to understand, what was going on in all of these different environments. And one of the things that I noticed was it didn't matter what environment you were in. If you were a high performer, you were constantly being targeted.
It's funny you say that, because one time one of the bosses that we had was just constant with me. And somebody brought that up to me. They're like, I think they're intimidated by you. And I was like, what? Like, why? And we talked before the meeting, and my perspective, my perception on how I would work as a subordinate would be, I give you all my information that I have in my expertise, in my knowledge, in my experience. And
Yep.
then you, as the leader, take that and combine it with all the other information that you're getting to make a best decision. And if I think like it's red flag moment, like warning, warning, we're going to go jump off a cliff, I'm going to be more insistent about it and explain why. That's how, that's my foundational belief.
Absolutely. And that's a very normal belief. And that is how most people look at themselves in these environments and how how they're going to work in these environments, how it should work. But unfortunately, that's not what ends up happening. They end up getting continued to be targeted, gaslit, the hard work that they're doing and the sharing of that information is being used against them and being used to position them or set them up basically for um, so they end up starting to question themselves and say, is this really happening to me? Or did I really just hear that? Am I too sensitive? Am I too much? These are things I talk about all the time in my guides and my frameworks on social media is these terms that are used. And so often you think and people, it's a compliment if you can actually get your mindset there. When somebody's telling you you're too much, it's most often they're threatened by you. You're showing what through what you're doing, you're actually showing their inconsistencies. And so they're trying to break you down and trying to gaslight you in a form so you don't keep showing that.
So just popped in my head when you're saying you made this comment before we were talking. What was one of the terms? Because when you first said it, I'm like, oh, oh, we think this is a good term. So tell me about that. You were,
Yeah, so the term with being a team player is usually, they use it in a positive angle, but what they're really doing is they're trying to position you and use it as a way that you can't particularly put it into words how they're backing you into this corner, but they'll say, oh, I thought you were a team player, and it's important that you learn ways to respond to these types of gaslighting comments or sentences or actions and phrases so that you can stop them from continuing. The reality is that gaslighting, bullying in the workplace, any of those, or workplace mobbing, any of those things, in order to continue, they need you to have reckless emotion. Yeah. Yep. And if you don't give them reckless emotion, there's nothing to continue to fuel that fire. So it burns out. So unfortunately, because this goes on, and again, this isn't justifying that any of these things are right, that in what's happening, they're not right. But the reality is those hard conversations, those hard comments, they're coming for you no matter what. So it's not about necessarily becoming tougher, it's about becoming prepared. And in that learning how to always respond calmly and concise, because the more you give them, the more they're going to have to use against you.
So, lot of thoughts in what you just said. So, the term I hate more than anything is the word passionate, because that was used against me all the time, right? And attrition is the other word
Mhm.
that I actually fondly had to learn. I had 3 people around me, I kid you not, that would say, don't move, because my nature is fiery. I will defend myself, right?
Mhm.
Which is comes, it would have been reckless emotion. In my head, it would have been just stepping up, going, no, this is not correct. But coming at it the way they could see, you come at it, they're painting the picture, because they were going up to the next level leadership, not my boss's boss kind of thing. And they're painting this picture, right? So you're somebody's getting their picture painted. What people have to keep in mind is that that picture that's being painted is not a real picture.
Mhm.
However,
Mhm.
if you come in, like you said, with a reckless emotion, you
Mhm.
all of a sudden just painted the picture for them. Like, oh yeah, see, that matches. But I want to counter something, because you said if you don't give them anything, it'll burn out.
Mhm.
I, I might challenge that and say that they can be really creative and continue to come up with different tactics.
Yeah, yeah, they absolutely can. And again, that's where it comes down to being prepared. I mean, every toxic dynamic has the same fuel. That fuel is your reaction. So if you look at
Ooh.
it that from that angle, it helps you be better prepared for it, right? So when they do something and you get flustered, they feel powerful. When you over explain, which so many people do in these situations, they have more to work with. So when you go quiet and withdraw, you also give them power, because they know that what they did has unsettled you. So there's this medium where you need to be kind of between these three. And that's why all three of those are really reckless emotion, because they're not in a controlled manner. Even when you're going quiet and withdrawing, you're still giving an emotion, you're
How,
still giving them power.
however, I actually strategically did that one time. Now, I wasn't like uh withdraw, like not coming to work and hiding out and like that. I wasn't
Right.
evasive. I just
Nope.
went quiet. I didn't say anything. So I would answer the question, yes, no, whatever. Didn't
And
give
that's
anything else, right? I just kind of, and let me tell you, those people crashed out. Like
correct,
they
because
were lost.
that's exactly what you have to do. You have to stay completely regulated. So that is the most disruptive thing that you can do, to disrupt their gaslighting, their toxic behavior, their targeting, their mobbing, all of those things, is you disrupt it by remaining regulated and not doing any of these big reckless emotional responses, because it stops fueling that fire. So you can't do a fake calm, you can't do a cold dismissal, because all of those things are emotions. You're still giving them some sort of a feedback that they can turn into something. So you just are going to stay grounded and steady. So you keep it just level. Exactly. The only responses that you give are very minimal, very basic, completely surface level. And you do it in a calm and a polite, I just met you and you're holding a door open for me.
Yeah. It, yeah. Have you seen any Senate committee hearings ever? And
Oh,
I'm not
yes.
making this
Hmm.
political. It's just an observation. I actually made this comment not long ago. I'm like, I am blown away at watching the engagement and like they'll come at people.
Hmm.
The question askers very strong, emotional, da, 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 and that person is just like I joke around and say they must like go get extra Botox before they go in there. Freeze their whole face up.
You
Like,
just freeze their whole face. Well, I mean, it's the same, it's similar if you're watching anybody that's in court,
yeah,
so the defendant, the prosecutor, what they're doing is they're trying to rile up the other side so much that they'll even make a facial or body movement of emotion or response that the the judge and the jury will see. I mean, that's what they're trying to do. They need that to fuel that fire.
tell me, we talked about this, the pattern recognition. Like we talked a little bit about it. Go into just some things that you will see because I think sometimes I have this idea in my head. When I watched where I was at, I would sometimes like scratch my head because individually away from the office, those were not, I wouldn't consider them really bad people, like you
Mhm,
can have a conversation. I mean, I wasn't going to go invite them to dinner or anything, but could have a conversation, you know,
mhm,
I mean, but because of our workplace environment, I didn't trust them as far as I could throw them. So I didn't, but I had this awareness, like there's this other side, like nobody's snipering them. They're not, nobody's 100% bad. Do
right.
you think, I'm going to ask two things. One, we're going to go back and talk about this pattern recognition so people can, one, see it and make sure they don't get sucked into it and become part of
Mhm,
it. Do
mhm.
you think there's this individualism versus collectivism, meaning like when there's somebody that's starting to do it, people maybe subconsciously have to make a choice of either joining it or not joining it?
Yep. That's mobbing. That's workplace
Mobbing.
mobbing. Yep, it has its term, and I've had many people, I've done some videos on this, and it's amazing how many people have written to me and, oh my goodness, thank you for giving me the words to,
Yes.
to do what happens, as well as there is that individual, the term gaslighting, right, um is so often we only associate it with a relationship,
Right.
right, like a marital
Right.
or relationship like that. But your workplace, your colleagues, your boss, however that hierarchy is, those are relationships. So gaslighting can happen in any sort of situation, that there are two or more humans that have to have some sort of an interaction. And that can be, there can be targeting, definitely, for individual and or collectively with the mobbing, because of how that pattern goes. So typically one of the major things that you watch for and where the mobbing sometimes comes in is typically in stage 3 of the gaslighting, or the toxic
There's stages to this.
relationship. There's stages.
Okay, tell me the stages. We gotta make everybody aware here. What's the
Yep.
stages?
We're stepping away for a quick break to hear from V2M Veteran Magazine. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with the interview.
Looking for stories that truly matter to our military community? Discover V2M, the Veteran Magazine. Read online at v2mag.com.
So the stages. So your first stage is the test. So, or not yours, but when somebody's doing this to you, so to help you be able to start to see the pattern, the first stage is the test. So usually it starts with small things like a comment that kind of lands strangely, a decision that was like made without you that affects you, and normally you would have been in that meeting, or, oops, they forgot to tell you about the meeting or forgot to include you in that email. It's a lot of things. A lot of times, this is definitely that stage where you are going, I think they're doing something to me, but there's nothing really you can prove. It's these little kinds of things. And they're trying to see how you're going to react to this. And this is where a lot of people will kind of talk themselves out of like, oh, I'm just being paranoid, or like, oh, I must just be being too sensitive. And that's what, so stage then it moves on based on your reaction. So stage two is where they start to escalate. So the tests, they start to become more frequent. They're a lot more brazen in this usually. The silence, because like if you start to kind of either over explain in stage one, or you retreated, especially if you start to retreat and become you shrink yourself, that's where they go, oh, all right, this is perfect. This is a perfect target. So they'll move on to that second stage. And you're like small things, but bigger things will start to happen. Like the standards will change. They'll start to take your ideas or things you did and start to kind of tell them as their own right in front of you, this is the brazen stage. So stage three, and stage three is, unfortunately, this is where most people are this is where they are in the pattern when they finally start to actually recognize it. But they've been the target now for quite a while. So in stage three, that's where the narrative comes in. And that's a lot of times where it will either remain as a one person, or it starts to become this mobbing. And more often than not, sadly, it does start to become this kind of mobbing mentality. And that's because, and that makes this is the most dangerous stage of all of them. And unfortunately, when they start to realize it, but the gaslighter or the person targeting you, they start to quietly manage the perspective that others have on you, and getting those other people on their team, and that they're going to see everything you're saying from that same angle, that same way. And so by the time that you realize it's happening, this story and perception about you, it already exists. And so it's so much harder to unravel at that point.
Is there past stage three, or is this the I'm
Well,
afraid to know, because I really think
right?
I seriously, the number of thoughts, and like you're unlocking memory after memory. I'm like, oh my God. Okay, so those are the stages, right?
Sometimes that third stage is called the recruiting stage too. That herding mentality. And again,
Yeah.
they have changed the perception of you to these people, but they don't realize like what these people that are getting recruited into is, they don't realize that this person is toxic and this person is targeting you and is gaslighting you. So they believe this perception.
Well, and then I think in the military, and like I said, I think I'm sure this is probably some level of comparable to corporate, but I think it's even worse in the military, because that person is contingent on your ratings, which is
Mhm.
leads you to your ability to promote. And
Mhm.
in order
Mhm.
to promote, you have to be able to have certain opportunities and do certain things and whatever. So when I started getting up in rank, I hit this rank and then I was like, I can't do another rank. Like I made a conscious choice because I knew if I am having this issue now, I can't imagine what this is going to be when I promote. So it becomes really um, kind of malignant. You know what I mean? And then these people, like you said, recruit them in. And I made the comment, I said, I started realizing you start making choices at this level. And the choices are how much you're willing to compromise yourself.
Right. And that is one of the number one things as as a high performer, you're hated and you're targeted when you're a high performance person. When you are somebody who is very genuine and very authentic and you truly function as I'm doing something, I do things not with the expectation of something in return that's
Yeah.
a benefit to me. The people that live in this in that don't function from that and function from this negative and this toxic kind of outlook and mindset, they can't understand. They don't understand how you can function in a way that there's no benefit to you and that you would just do something because it's the right thing to do or the good thing to do or the helpful thing to do.
So let's talk about this because, okay, so we're talking about the stages, right?
Yep.
And the pattern recognition. What are things that you can see early? And because the earlier you see it, the sooner you get to make a choice.
What my goal is, and one of the reasons why I've felt so passionately about this and have continued to talk about it and make tools to try to help people is because you you can't necessarily even make it stop or
No.
completely understand it. But the two things that you can do is recognizing the pattern so you can see it clearly and you can stop questioning whether you're going crazy making this up and then learn how to respond to their different approaches as they're doing it to you. And that will help make you
Empowered.
safer, empowered, and, empowered, of course, because you'll know what to say in response and what not to say. And usually you can actually eventually, if it gets handled correctly enough times, eventually they're going to get bored with you. Because again, if you're not feeding into the chaos and you're not feeding the fire with reckless emotion, then they're going to get bored and they're going to find somebody else to go and target.
So, okay,
So,
pattern
I
recognition.
mean,
Go ahead.
so you did ask before if there was a fourth stage. So there is a fourth stage
Oh
if
God.
you decide to confront them. If you decide to confront them, you have to know they're going to flip it. And they're going to flip it
Yeah.
and you're the aggressor.
Yes. Yeah, that
Now, because
happened.
they've already set up the perception and the narrative of the other people. And so they're going to flip it that you are now the aggressor onto them. You are the difficult one, and
Yeah.
they're going to be the victim. So,
You just
you
got to
know,
be prepared, like you said, right?
right.
You have to be prepared. So give me a scenario because the other part we need to talk about is living in that environment, like nobody should have to endure that, right? So if they want to have a cesspool of toxicity, everybody has a shelf life on which they can handle that. Not everybody should do that. So give me some examples of one of the pattern recognitions, how to handle it. And then at the end of it, I want to talk about when people really need to evaluate that it's time to leave and how to do that gracefully, kind of thing.
Yeah, so absolutely. So I mean, so one of the best ways to respond to kind of any and most of the comments or interactions that you have with a toxic individual, gaslighting individual, is you are going to respond to pretty much anything that they say, that is not just a fact of, is this, put this paper there. You're going to respond with, what do you mean by that exactly? And it doesn't give them any emotion. You're not being mean, you're not being loud, giving them you're not over explaining and giving them the ability to say, oh, you were reading into this, or you're being too sensitive, or you're being too much. Or typically it will either help them, they'll either back down, especially if there's other people around, because a lot of times they're not brazen enough to necessarily say it again, exactly what they said, especially if it was disrespectful or out of line. um, or or it will force them to commit to what they said, and they will state it again. But again, you kept the power, because you're asking them to clarify. You're not over explaining. You're not giving them any sort of emotional response. You're just asking for clarification. That's it.
Fair enough. And document it.
And document it, of course. Everything. Document, document, document.
So
Yep.
what's another scenario of these things?
So say that when they try to leave you out of things, right? So they leave you out of the meetings, and they say the deliberate exclusion that's happening. You can ask them this: it looks like I wasn't included on this thread. I want to make sure I'm looped in going forward because this affects my work. Sometimes you have to be careful with how you position that, because it can give a little bit too much over explaining. What was probably one of the most, do people raise their voices a lot, or they would kind
I'll,
of come at you slyly?
all right, we'll play the scenario game. I got 100 of them, but we'll give a couple. Okay, so sitting in three of them come right to my head. So sitting in a meeting, and I ask a question to the branch chief at the time, the medical branch chief at the time, and we have all of us, our whole office, so enlisted officers, everybody there, and I make a statement like, I think, or based off of this, my concern is, or I just asked this very general question. And then I followed it with a statement, because I'm like, because I'm concerned XYZ, right?
Mhm.
So I was stating the question, explaining why, just with my concern. That was that. And he turns around and looks around the room. He's like, does anybody else believe what Hoffmeyer believes? Anybody else going to jump on the Hoffmeyer bandwagon?
Triangulation.
See, I'll give the scenarios. You give me the way after the fact.
Yes.
But
That is triangulation. And that is a manipulation tactic. A lot of people they don't necessarily they definitely don't know usually that there's a word for it, but they're trying to bring in those other, I shouldn't tell you this, but so and so mentioned, or so and so agrees with me, everybody agrees with me, or do you agree with me? So typically, in a response like that, you can say, I hear you have a concern. I'd rather hear directly from you.
He was right in the middle of the meeting. I mean, this was like smack
Mhm.
dab in the middle of it. Okay.
Yep. And I would have, but if he's going out, right, he's asking everybody else in the room for their response, I would say, you're asking all of us for our responses, right? Do I agree with Hoffmeyer? Well, I am Hoffmeyer. So I hear that you have a concern. I'd like to hear what that concern is directly from you rather than everybody else in the room.
Yeah. Because he's saying, well, does everybody else agree? Well, what's your
Correct.
concern with my
Correct.
statement?
Yep. Yep. And he's just you trying correct. And that's because, and so then see if, and in that, you're going to now see, is he going to back down? Is he going to start to backpedal? Or is he brazen enough to stand there and repeat it?
I'm trying to remember, like, I think I just sat there stunned and everybody was just like looking at him like, okay. And then
Hmm.
moved on. I think the boss was like, okay, let's move on kind of thing.
Yeah.
So I want people to understand, like, when this stuff is happening and your theme is consistent, maintain yourself, do not get frazzled. And emotional response is going to be it's going to kill you. It will.
It will. And
And it's worse in
so
the military. It's worse in the
it's,
military. It's worse being a female in the military.
oh, yes,
You
yes.
have to, it's not, in one sense, it's survival, but it's not healthy if you don't get yourself out of that scenario, out of that situation. So that's the thing that I want. Like, what you're offering is invaluable. I wish I had a Chelsea when I was in. I mean, I'm surprised I don't have ulcers, that because of like how much I had to hold it together, right? So when this is going on, what should you're now realizing somewhere between stage 2 and stage 3, that this is bad. I'm getting
Yep.
gunned down. Um, I am maintaining myself. I'm reading all of Chelsea's tips and I'm keeping myself calm. But you can only do this for so long. What should also be happening? How do you handle yourself from there?
So your question was kind of twofold. So
Yeah.
speaking of why I started to build and create what I've built and the guides and these workbooks and these frameworks was exactly to your point. I kept hearing again and again people that were listening, people that were viewers that were watching my content, they would be messaging me and DMing me and saying things like, I know I need to set a boundary, but I just don't know what to say. Or they would be able to identify that this was going on in the environment, and they could name it and they could identify the pattern. But again, when that moment arrives and they're in that moment, they freeze
Mm-hmm.
or have reckless emotion, or they don't, because in that very moment they're so blindsided so often they have no idea what to say. And the most recent tool that I've designed is it's called Precision Over Panic script system, and it's 208 script like workbook that it gives you all sorts of different situations, as well as it gives you a chart that you go through for a self-assessment, a situation assessment, that then helps you categorize the dynamic of what the dynamic is that you're seeing, what stage you're in, and then tells you, where to go to find those scripts. And it gives you different levels of the scripts to choose from. Each script has like a soft, a neutral, and a firm. So you can choose based on the relationship and how many times it's happened, or the stage that you're in, or whether what your role is. Because again, military, corporate, doesn't matter. There's a hierarchy, right? So you can, depending on if it's a toxic interaction with a boss versus a peer, you can have different ways of handling it and different responses.
I think it's phenomenal. Let me tell you, and the reason why I was asking, like, what you're giving is on stage 1 and 2 is probably thriving techniques. And when you start hitting 3 and above, it's becoming survival techniques.
Hmm.
And somewhere in there, the person has to figure out, can I stay in this environment? So my question is, using those techniques, is it gonna change the environment?
So this comes up so often with people, right? Leaving sometimes is the right answer, and sometimes that is an option. But for some people in some situations, and oftentimes, there is not that is not an option. I want to definitely be very clear. There are environments that are genuinely dangerous to your health,
Yes.
your reputation, your mental health, your physical health. And in that, the right move is to leave. You need to leave, but again, you still need to do it strategically and protect yourself on the way out. What I've noticed over time, even working in these different, such a variety of different settings, managing teams, working with leadership, is if somebody leaves one toxic environment and still hasn't learned how to handle themselves and how to be prepared, they find themselves very quickly back into the same situation.
It's like an abusive relationship. I mean, a lot of
It
times,
is.
yeah.
Human nature is human nature. And sadly, even if you leave one company and go to another company that is great and the root of it is phenomenal, and maybe the toxicity isn't all through the root of it and up to the top, the likelihood that over your time of working there, you're never going to have some sort of a coworker, colleague, boss, something that has gaslighting tendencies and makes that toxic relationship. I mean, it's going to be very rare. You're working with humans. You're gonna be, especially if you're a high performer, you are going to be targeted. And so the strategy is not only whether you can get out of the toxic environment, but it's more important that you get equipped for it. No matter where it is that you're going, whether you're going to stay, whether you're going to go, but that the outcome is across every environment. It's a skill. It's knowing how to read what's actually happening and knowing what to say when it does to protect yourself.
Practice makes perfect. I mean, it's almost like you got to go through those scenarios. Yeah, because when I learned over time, I was one of the most strategic people. I could read a handshake. I could read the slightest body movement because I had to. It was my survival, right?
Mhm. But you still learned that skill. And a big piece of that was learning how to identify,
And
learning
when
how
you
to
learn,
identify it.
and you bring up a really good point. Two things. When you don't heal from that, because
Hmm.
you do have to heal, um, and you don't learn from it, and you don't learn that stuff, you are bound to repeat it. That like
Mhm.
end of story, right? So now, like in the worlds that I work in, all kinds of they're coming out of the military, and I'm working with a lot of these people, and there's all kinds of these sociopathic traits. I mean, we fling around narcissists a little too easy there, but the sociopathic traits, right? There's all kinds of them, and I see the red flags, and I just am like, yep, they'll try. So, I want the audience to understand that, like Chelsie said, she even sets it up for you guys in mild, medium, and hot. How firm do you got to set that boundary? If it's a first go, you just softly set that boundary, and you move up from there. And it hits those levels there. I'm just going to tell you, you're not changing this. You are not changing the outcome. When it hits that level, I'm just here to tell you that just leave, like walk away. It's okay. Find an exit strategy. And if you're stuck and you can't, oh, absolutely help. Reach out to Chelsie, have a meeting with her. I mean, if you need to, but learn that, because hopefully they will back off over time, and they will realize your boundaries and like leave well and left alone. But if they don't, you've got to know how to continue, and you've got to understand that you are not wrong. You are completely correct in what you're doing, because it does have an impact.
Mhm.
So, Chelsie, what else do you think is important as we kind of wind down? What would be your biggest thoughts for the audience?
Just really, I think there's so many people that find themselves just so often giving into the mindset of, oh, I may be being too sensitive. I may be being too, it's not that bad. Oh, it could be worse. And being willing to tolerate it. And I just really empower you to know you don't have to tolerate it.
Mm-mm.
And it's not okay what's being done. And you can advocate for yourself and learn these skills and learn these tools to help change at least how you are in the dynamic. And so it will give you your power back and hopefully in turn help kind of eventually shut it down.
And it's going to help you as you move into leadership positions.
Mhm.
If anything, it's taught me is how not to treat people,
Mhm.
but you can take those same skills that Chelsie is offering to learn how to work with your people.
Mhm.
Because when you're now the boss, you're dealing with all the personalities constantly. And the
And
best
how to
thing,
spot
yes,
somebody who is, as a leader,
yes,
if you have somebody who's in your workforce who is doing doing this to a colleague, or it helps you also be able to spot that pattern and what's going on and not get sucked into or maybe in that recruiting stage, and you'll know that they're trying to change this perception.
All right, you bring up a really good point. So I know we're winding it down, but I want to kind of touch on this, because if you as the leader, you don't get to see the good, bad, and ugly all the time, right? So all your people are putting their best face forward. We've watched it 1,000 times, right? You're always putting your best face forward and trying to agree with the boss and just work with them and be all collaborative and stuff. And then they're turning around whipping the puppy when you're not looking, right? So
Right.
especially that middle management. So if you as a leader do not get in on this, do not pick up on it, or unknowingly, maybe knowingly endorsing this,
Right.
you're going to lose your best workers. That
You're
you're going to lose your best workers
always,
immediately.
always in teams, super successful teams break down from this all the time because they lose their high performers. They lose the people that are that are
Getting it done.
actually doing the things correctly and doing the positive things and the things that are actually helping the team. But because if they're constantly being targeted, you're going to lose them.
Yeah. And if you can't pick up on that, or you're part of it, and if you're sitting there losing people and these are like some of your top performers, you better be asking yourself why. Like immediately be asking yourself why.
Right. And especially if you're a good leader, if you're a good boss and you're going, I know that I support my staff as very well. You're a good listener, you're a good communicator, you support them very well, but you're still losing them. A lot of times you need to look inside that circle and see what is going on at their level. And was there a bad egg in there that's basically targeting these people? So even though you're doing everything right as a leader, they can't stay because of this other,
Yeah, it's going to ruin it.
Gaslighting person.
And there's one or two things. I saw one of the coolest things. I was like, wow, that's interesting. You ever seen Undercover Boss?
Oh, yes.
I love
Yes.
that show, right?
Mhm.
And so they're seeing these either incredible people or toxic people or a mix of both or whatever. And I remember once, I don't remember the exact scenario, but it was somebody that was like, he saw that he was a really smart person and had this skill set that was like kind of undeveloped
Mhm.
because he saw that this person didn't have really the right tools and was making crap choices from it. And it was resulting in him being kind of laissez-faire and basically a menace and causing a problem within the team.
Mhm.
So the boss has two choices, right? He sees that. It's either get rid of him, which we've seen that. This guy actually took him aside and said, we're going to give you a shot. I see potential in you, and I want to explore this before we call it quits. And basically put him through a work plan, mentoring program, whatever you want to call it. And that was what he told him. He said, these behaviors are unacceptable. These choices are crap.
Mhm.
But I see potential in you. And so we're going to do this. We're going to run you through whatever program this was. And I thought, that is very interesting. So it kind of lends back to like, can you change it? Well, as a leader, if you see there's one bad seed that can quickly spread and you can catch that, maybe there is an opportunity to afford the rehab because people really are forgiving when they see people trying to do the right thing. They can do that if it's not too far gone. So for leadership, it's important to see that early on. And if your high performers are sending you very concerning statements, you probably should look into that.
Mhm. Mhm. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Crazy. So, all right, that I'm glad we touched on that. I'm like, oh, why didn't we look at it the other way? That's horrible. But yeah,
Yep.
so it really, you have the new people, the people are sitting in the middle of it, and then you have leadership. And leadership, some of us are on both sides of it, right? You
Mhm.
are a leader and you've got a boss. And
Right.
so then it becomes really complex when it's at a level above you, you're protecting your team. Well, that's one of our bosses got in that situation, very kind person, came out strong. Our whole issue was the director. and it was crushing her. So yeah,
Mhm.
that's what she got caught in a really rough situation there. So, all right. I think we have beat on this enough. Last thoughts, official last thoughts, and we'll wrap it down here.
No, thank you so much. This was such an honor to be here today and to speak with you all. And I really hope this was helpful.
Yeah.
And just know that you're not alone in this, and that there are some things that we can do to help.
Yep, absolutely. All right. So you can find her on Instagram. You're going to see it in the show notes. Go find her, because I'm telling you, if you've been in the environment, you're going to jaw drop. I mean, I was like, she must have been sitting in our office. She had to have been. So I appreciate you, Chelsie. Thank you so much for everything. And
Appreciate you too, Donna.
yeah,
Thank you.
absolutely phenomenal information. So I'm excited for other people to get this in their hands. All right, everybody, we're going to wind this down. And from all of us here at Beyond the Frontline and our parent podcast, Coming Home Well, we're always appreciative of all of you. We hope you guys enjoyed this as much as we enjoyed doing it, because we do this from the bottom of our heart. We don't get paid a dime to do this. So if you could share, comment, if you can write a review, it just helps spread it. And that's our goal. I would love this in everybody's hands. And I'd love everybody to hear Chelsea's information, because honestly, I think it's really, really, really important. And maybe you find that you're in a toxic work environment, or maybe you find that you start developing some of those traits and you can course correct from this and learn how to do it better. So use it, share it, comment, engage, and we are greatly appreciative for all of you. So we hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful week.
Thank you.
Thanks for listening to Beyond the Frontline, a podcast of Coming Home Well. Join us every other Wednesday. And if you enjoyed this episode, please share it with others, post about it on social media, or leave a rating and review. Thanks again. And until all are home and all are well.